And we will be, okay, thank you, Mary. Trafalgar Square has given us a gift certificate, and in the middle of the program, we will be a drawing. You must be present to win the drawing. And so our next program is next Monday, the 13th, with Dr. Heather Beach and she's talking about the horse's head, including anatomy and function and related structures. And I know this is a really fascinating subject. I encourage everybody. But and one other thing I want to mention briefly is Dressage4Kids. If you don't know about us, I hope you'll go online and read about the different programs that we have. It's at dressage4kids.org. But we do have a new program for trainers, a scholarship to enable you to go out and get a little education. So if you are a professional instructor, you might want to check that out. And with no further ado, let me tell you I'm not even going to tell you much about Katie, our speaker. I'm going to let her do it. But let's just say, as a moderate newcomer to the very highest levels of international competition, last year was a banner year for her with the World Dressage Championships, competing in Europe, Rotterdam and Aachen, and the Nations Cup in Wellington, etc. So, Katie, my first question, welcome and thank you for being here. My first question is always, how did you happen to start getting on horses' backs?
Thank you so much for having me, everybody. I'm excited to talk to you all tonight. And I have been riding since before I was born. My mom is an instructor in California, Southern California, and she rides dressage. And my dad had nothing to do with horses. He was very, very supportive of my mom and of my dream of doing horses. And so my mom rode up until 2 weeks before I was born. And then, got our pony my very first pony when I was like 3 months, and been riding ever since. That's all I've ever wanted to do.
So you think you would have, even if your mom hadn't put you on a horse right in the very, very, very beginning, do you think you would have ridden or done everything you could to ride horses? Or was it just sort of because it was there that got you into it?
No, I really do. I think I would have found it because I truly love the interaction and the aspect of trying to teach an animal something that doesn't speak your language. So like my dog, again, in my free time, not very much of it now, but she used to do agility and she does a ton of trick training. And I just truly enjoy like the training aspect of it and the bond you have with your animals. And so I think I would have found it. And I also think even if it's put in your lap and it's something easy access when you're younger, you're not going to stick with it unless it's really in your blood and you want it, because it's way too much work to say, I enjoy it, but it's really, not the most important thing to me. No one's going to want to stay in it then. And like my sister, we had obviously the same kind of childhood, and she rode until she was early teens and then kind of just got out of it and still loves the animals, but riding wasn't in her blood.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a time when you thought, I just can't do this? I'm not gonna. Well, let me ask you first, was international competition always in your head that you wanted to go to the Olympics? Everybody wants to go to the Olympics kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that I wanted to be a Grand Prix rider for sure. Mm-hmm. And when I was young, that was something that was really, I aspired a lot to, and my family does not come from a big amount of financial backing. So my mom, majority of our horses were all homebred. And my very first horse that I took from training level to third level and a little bit of fourth was an off the track thoroughbred for $3,000. And I rode him until I was 14, probably before I ever rode my first warm blood. So it was really, if you'd asked me when I was a little kid, like, what do I want to do with my life? It was this. And my grandma would play horse shows with us, and I taught my stick horse when I was like 5. My mom went on a trip and taught my stick horse all these Grand Prix movements that she gave me a list to teach it while I was gone. So it's really always been what I've wanted. And probably if you'd asked me 10 years ago, like, what is your goals now? I wouldn't have been brave enough to say, what I've done now. But as a kid, yes, for sure.
So you were piaffing and passaging and with your stick horse around the backyard or something?
Oh yes, I would go with my mom whenever she'd go teach, because she didn't have childcare, and so in between the lessons, she would give me mini lessons on my stick horse
I
Papa,
love it.
and I'd run around the ring and learn a Grand Prix movement, and then I'd go out and practice while she taught and come back. And then when she went on this cruise the first time I was away with my dad, she left me a list of things to teach the horse each day. And
Mhm.
my grandma would tell me what the task was for that day. So when she came home, he knew all these new skills.
That's wonderful. I love it. Um, was there ever a time when you did get really discouraged?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of something that any sport that's going to happen in, and for sure, I think even more so in horses, because you can control your environment and your way you train and the way you prepare and everything down to the 10th degree, but you can only control horses so much.
Mhm.
So, at the end of the day, they have emotions and feelings, and they might have slept bad, or they might have a little ache or a pain somewhere. And that's kind of out of your control. You can try to do the best you can, but so it's kind of set up to have disappointing times. And that's, I think, normal. And for me, when I left Europe and came home, I was out of horses. I told myself, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go back to school. I was incredibly broke. I'd been doing the working student hand to mouth, possibly not even hand to mouth, for many, many years, and had kind of chased the dream. And I said, I'm 23. I need to buckle down and actually be an adult and go back to school and do life. I did full time school up until I went to Europe, and then finally I asked my mom, my dad. I was like, have I shown you that I want this bad enough, or would you grant me the grace of saying, go follow your dream? And they said yes. So I went to Europe, spent a year over there, and then when I got back, I was done, and
Yeah.
it did not last long.
Well, we'll come back to that. Before, I'd like to go back a little bit. I know you went to the North American Young Rider Championships and did extremely well, but am I correct that you did that on a borrowed horse or a leased horse or something? Is
Yes.
there a story there about how that happened that you had a
Yeah.
horse?
Yeah, so I did juniors, back the original way of doing festival for the junior division. I did
Mhm.
that on a homegrown, born and raised in our backyard horse, and then
Let me
he was
interrupt a moment. What
mhm.
kind of horses were those that you raised?
They
Your
were
family
they
raised?
were warm
Warm
bloods.
bloods. Okay.
Yeah, and, he was really cool, and now looking back and all the stuff we know now, I bet he had ulcers and, things we can manage
Mhm.
differently now that we just didn't really know about back then. And so he couldn't do the young rider stuff, and so I started looking for horses to lease. Um, Again, I didn't come from a place of funding, so buying something was not in the equation. And I leased one horse, spent about 6 months with it, and it ended up just not being, it just was not a fit. And so sent that one back, and then I was in the middle of qualifying season. And I was like, I'm not going to Young Riders. This is it. That's okay. I've tried the last 3 years. I haven't made it for various reasons. And so that's fine. My mom was like, no, 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 no. You are going to call every name in the California Dressage Society art, that newsletter that comes out once a month. And that's where all the for sale ads were. And she's like, you're going to call every for sale ad and you're going to ask them if they'd ever do a lease. And so I said, okay. And I called and called and called and left voicemails and emails and this and that. Tripped across one guy who had a horse for sale, and he said, you can come try him. The owner said she'd lease him. He's not very easy to ride. And I was like, I don't care. And so I went down there, and I could barely do everything in the Prix St. George. And he was definitely not easy, and he was extremely strong. And took him home. And 2 weeks later, we had to do our first show, because this was it was middle of qualifying. So you either do it now or it's not happening. And I went to a national show, and it was rough. And I learned a little bit more about him. And then 1 week later, we had to do our first CDI. And I told my mom, I said, if I come in last in the class, and this was when Region 7 was really competitive.
Mhm.
And I said, if I come in last in the class, I'm done. No, we're not doing it this year. I can try 21. I was 20 that year, so I had one more year left. I can try then, but really, it's just not the cards for me. And I got like, I don't know, probably, I think it was like a 60.7 or something. And I came in second to last by like 0.2 of a point. And I felt like I had won the Olympics. I was so happy. And so I said, all right, let's do it. And my mom was a saint and drove me all over the state to get the 3 other qualifying scores. And we came in at like the lowest average on the team and barely made it to NA or to NAY, what's NAYC now. And I was just super, super, super excited to be there. I had a great team. And at championships, we had been together for 3 months. And so his owner, the lovely lady named Pam Schachter, who I'm still incredibly close friends with, she was like one of those angels in your life. And she said, okay, he's going to be for sale now that he has training and he's got a better show record and stuff. So she posted flyers for him being for sale at NAYC. And he led the team to team gold. And then came out 2 days later and won individual gold. And so that was really, really, really special. And she said, took the flyers down and said, you know what, keep him for another year. Like, you're not done with him. And so I kept him for another year. Ended up taking him to Idaho to train with Debbie McDonald, who I'd done working student with a lot on and off, and did festival the next year. And then she kept him and rode him all the way through retirement and until he passed away. So it was a really, really special story.
Now, I'm asking questions that I should know the answer to before I ask, but I'm going to ask anyway. Why do you think she kept the horse with you? Was it purely because you'd been successful and she just liked having a winning horse, or was there more to it?
No, I think that you put out in the universe and you'll get it back one day. So I try to really think like, treat others how you want to be treated. And I think for her, it was really special. That's why I still talk to her twice a month and she follows all my riding. She gets all the videos of every single horse I show. I have a group of like 15 people that have been in my life for a long time. They're the core group that I text any updates to. She's part of that group. And she was like, you've worked extremely hard with him, because he went from scoring 60s and high 50s to scoring 70s. And so you've worked extremely hard with him. He obviously loves you. And she's like, I don't need the money right now. I'm getting so much enjoyment from seeing you guys so happy together, and making her feel like she's part of the team. And I think that's what's really important. And when you have an owner, whether it's your parents, whether it's your sponsor, whether it's a syndicate, they really feel like they're part of the journey and they're part of this development of a horse and a rider and an owner, and everyone's developing as a team. Not that they ever feel like they're just a way to facilitate success.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So at some point after you just did Young Riders once?
I did Young Riders once, and then I did festival the year after.
Yeah. And then something led you to Germany. You want to fill that in? Yeah,
I was aging out of Young Riders, and Milo, the Millennium, the horse that I was leasing, was not going to be a Grand Prix horse. He was not the very most motivated horse in the world. And as we all know, Grand Prix is hard. And he said, I'm a very good small tour horse, so be thankful. And so Pam took him back and rode him. And I was kind of faced with I had been in school full time. I worked, I had a small training business. When I graduated high school, actually, I started when I was 16. So I started teaching when I was 16, and then worked all the way through Young Riders. And I'd ride all day, and then I'd go to school at night after high school. So I did night school for 2 years and did full-time night school. And then after Young Riders, I said, Mom and Dad, like, I will finish whatever degree you want me to finish, but I really don't. I want to do horses. And
let me interrupt again. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What were you studying in college and night school?
Communications and German. because
Smart.
what language do you want to speak if you want to be a professional rider? German. um, so they said, you know what, you've done pretty much everything. I think I was 1 or 2 classes short of finishing out my degree. And they said, you have enough now that at least if it doesn't work out, you have something to fall back on. You can go back to school, finish it really fast, and get a job. And I said, okay. So I was either going to finish school or continue just doing my own small training business. And when I did a small training business, I taught everything. Like, your horse wanted to learn how to go through water on trails, I would take it on trails. If you didn't want to go bridges, I do bridges. If you wanted to have a Saturday morning lesson with your 3 best friends and chat about life and learn how to post the trot, I do that. Like, I taught gaited horses. I did all sorts of things. And I was basically like, if you want your horse to figure out how to do it, like, if I don't know how to tell it to do that, I will tell you. Like, I think that's above my skill set. And the lady, like, with the gaited horse was like 2 horses. We had 4. She was like, I'll get you lessons with the gaited trainer. And I was like, okay, if you do that, like, you tell me exactly what to do, I'm sure I can figure out how to teach the horse to do it. So either continue on that road or go to Europe, because I don't have money for a U25 horse. No one's going to let you really lease a U25 horse. That's a really hard road, especially for feed leases, which is what I could afford. And so I applied for a job over there at Gestuten-Iffenberg. And
How did you choose that? Excuse me. How did you choose the place that you went? Gestuten?
Euro Dressage. They posted an ad on Euro Dressage looking for an assistant trainer, and I applied for that. And they said the position's been filled, but we have a working student position. And I was like, well, not making very much money as it is, so sure, why not? And I went there, and again, I feel like you put things in the universe and they just come back. I had the most incredible experience. Like, the family was amazing. Their head trainer was amazing. They ended up giving me a full lineup of, like, I rode everything from the 3-year-olds, and the oldest I had was 8. I got to show. They took me to all their family functions. Like, they were just incredible people. And by the end of the time over there, I was the assistant trainer ended up leaving, and I was her assistant trainer. I managed her barn at home and was her FEI groom. So we went all over Europe doing CDIs when she showed. And it was just, I got done working there, and I was really burnt out. I feel like I had, like, chased the dream, and I was very tired emotionally, physically, everything. And like I said, extremely broke. So then I was pretty sad. They wanted me to stay really bad, and they were incredible people, but it was not the right thing to stay.
What was your, most of the time while you were there, what was your, like, daily schedule sort of like?
So I thought this is going to be great because I speak German. This is great. No, your classroom German is much different than, like, life German in dialect in a barn. So that is equally as exhausting as, like, learning someone's new system, is having to learn all the different vocabulary, and no one spoke English. It was an all German barn. So it was also a relatively exciting experience at first. And so we started at 6, and then we'd work from, like, 6 to 7, muck stalls, feed, put a load on the walker, and then when that load walked, something that I think is so neat about the European culture. My husband's Austrian, so I have spent now a lot of time in Europe. Everything's a little bit more of, like, a team, and for me, like, everyone has breakfast every morning together, which is kind of cool. And I think here in the US, like, not just in the horse industry, but everyone's just work all the time, and we just want to keep on this rat race all day long. And I see it's very important, but I also thought that was a really neat experience. And so every morning, everyone's somebody else, we all rotate through, and everyone would get bread and butter. And that was also my first experience seeing that, like, that's breakfast, bread and butter and jam. Like, that's like heaven on a plate. So that was really exciting. And so we'd all sit down and have breakfast together for about a half an hour, go down, we'd work until noon and ride. I would do a lot of riding and grooming. And then and we had to turn all the horses and bring them in. And then another new experience was they took a 2-hour lunch.
Mhm.
That was a little hard for me because I moved over there in November, so it was really cold and I had never lived anywhere cold. And so I was like, "What do you guys do for 2 hours? Like this like it's like what do you do with your life?" And they said, "Take a nap, eat lunch, do whatever." I took a nap and I have never been so cold. It's like those first few months when you don't get warm and take a nap and then go back down to the unheated barn. That was very hard. Um, and so then we'd work until and do like more horses in the afternoon, feed, more turnout, walker, and then we were done by about 5 or 6. And then we had to do night check. Um, I think it was like 3 or 4 nights a week. I do night check, and then every other weekend.
Mhm.
And I worked 6.5 days, so I
Mhm.
worked a lot.
Yeah. So you came home and you were thinking that maybe riding wasn't where you were going to spend the rest of your life, correct?
And I just was like, if I want to really ride, and if I can't really ride, I don't know that just doing some little lessons on the side to make money is really what makes my heart beat at that moment.
Mhm.
And so I thought I was have to be an adult and go back to school and finish that. I nannied, so I nannied for 6 months, and I went to school full time. Um, 3 months into that, with all of the minuscule amount of savings I had, I bought a yearling. So obviously, I stayed out of horses very long. um, and that was all I could afford. But I was like, I can't not be around a horse. And I was like, I can just have a horse on the side and do that and make money doing something else. And then the McDonald actually called me, um, and I hadn't spoken to her in about a year, and just because our paths just kind of separated. And she said that she had a person who she taught clinics for in Colorado, and they are looking for a new trainer. And his first response was, "I'm not moving." Like I had my now husband, we were together then, and I was like, I have a really good relationship. I'm in school. I'm like at peace with not chasing the dream. Just have a horse on the side. I'm really okay with it. And she was like, I think you really should talk to her. And she's like, it's not a sponsorship. It never will be. But, even if you do it for a year, she goes, are you really broke? And I was like, yes, extremely broke. She goes, even if you just do it for a year, then teach your kids and make money, and tell her it's just for a year until she finds somebody else, and go with that. And that's actually how I got started with the position I have now. And it's been 11 years this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me go back just a moment to Germany. In the riding and training that you were part of over there, what would you say was, that you had to change your riding the most, that was very different from what you had learned here in the US as a successful pre-St. George rider, basically?
Um, I don't think there was anything, because obviously my mom coached me, and then when I was like 16, I started with Debbie, and then from like 18 all the way through young riders, I worked with Debbie probably twice a month, and then my mom the other parts. And so feel like I had a pretty good solid foundation. I think for me, one of the biggest things, that was the most amount of like quality dressage horses that I've ever ridden.
Mhm.
And she was kind of Johanna von Fierps. She's older than me, like, but not by a ton. And she's like, here's your 6 horses. And I said, okay, train them. Like, no. And she's like, yeah, I've seen you ride, train them. I was like, but I need lessons on all of them. She was like, no, you don't. Train them. And now looking back, they're not 80% horses, but they're all warm bloods, and they all had nice walk, trot, and canters. And I think the biggest thing that for me is how key forward is. And that when in doubt, you go forward, period. Like there's no question about that. And that then also another big key thing that I learned about young horses, I almost got bucked off my very first horse show, is that it's important to give your young horses walk breaks, because it's very easy when they're 3 and 4 to be like, work so short, it's 15 minutes. You walk, trot, canter. If they're good, walk, trot, canter the other way, go home. But then you get to a horse show and you have a walk break in your test and you pick up the reins and the horse is like, oh, this is exciting now because my blood's been boiling. And then we walked and we had to like be all quiet for a minute. Then things get really wild. So that was a big thing that I learned about that. But besides that, I don't think riding wise there was anything that drastic, but I think it's because I was pretty well prepared. I've been very, very lucky with some incredible instruction in my life, you know, between my mom and Debbie McDonald and now Adrian. Those are pretty solid amounts of instruction.
So you, I'm guessing that the Colorado was TYL farm, is that right?
Yes.
When you came back, yes. And then you ended up also coming to Wellington, is that correct?
Yeah.
With them, and you're still with them.
Yes.
Yeah. So how'd you end up having the success you ended up with this past year? How'd that happen?
Many years of a lot of work, like lots and lots, and lots of disappointment and lots of feeling like, I think if you don't ever feel like, am I good enough? Can I really do this? Is it possible? You probably aren't good enough if you don't ever think that. Because I think that one thing that makes the really, really good riders good is that you go home and you think about it at night. You think, what could I do better? How could I make this different? How could I help this horse understand this thing? And I actually I talked to Adrian, you know, we've been very long time friends for 17 years now. And she's been my coach for 12, 9 very, very consistently. And I said, do you ever feel like I just went to world championships and now I'm in this place where I feel like I don't like the way I ride at all? Like, what is that normal? I was like, sometimes I can like go back and watch the video and be like, no, I really did do that. But right now I feel like I'm just kind of floundering around, not really knowing what I'm doing. And she's like, oh my gosh, yes. It comes in phases and you just got to ride the wave and know that that's what that amount of self-reflection is what makes you be able to be better. Because I've always said I'm not the most talented, like God gifted rider in the world, but by God, I will work super hard. And so I think that is something that's very important. And then surrounding yourself with incredible people, and not incredible people that can just do things for you, but who make you want to be a better person, who make you want to be a better rider, a better horseman, and a better friend. Like that kind of stuff I think is so important. And it's quality people, not the quantity. And so for me, like last year was incredibly exciting and kind of unexpected. You know, we purchased Quartet as a horse actually for Kylie. That was his job, for the amateur owner. And she said, I want you to finish him. And I've finished probably at that point 5-ish Grand Prix horses, and none had made it to the ring for various reasons. They got sold. I did it for somebody else. And she goes, I want you to finish him, put some mileage on him, and then I'll take him. And I was like, okay. And we all thought he was going to be maybe a 65% horse in the Grand Prix in a CDI. And it just goes to show you, like, you can never count one out, because what he has in spades is heart. And it was such an incredible experience to be able to do that on him, because he gives so much. Like he gives, you feel like you might be getting to 71, but you feel like you're going to get a 90, because he is like ready for you every step of the way. And for me to have that experience on a horse like him before I have a horse, I mean, I have.
Oops. Are we all frozen?
No.
Is she still talking?
No, Katie's frozen.
Katie, can you hear me? What do we do now? Anybody know?
Can someone text her?
Huh. Mary, are you texting her? Now I've lost her entirely.
Nope, she's back. She's Katie, you're still on mute though. Just unmute yourself.
There we go.
Oh, there you are over there. So we lost you there for a moment. Were you,
I was
were
like,
you-
oh no.
No, okay. So go ahead, pick up where you left off.
I'm not sure what you guys heard last.
Katie,
Yeah.
where you are, sorry, one thing that I hope it's not rude of me to ask, how old are you?
34.
34. So you came back from Europe and you were
I was
22.
23 when I came back.
23, okay. And you had your first big success, really, I mean, a really big success
A
last
long
year.
time.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I had done a festival, a
Mhm.
small tour.
Were
And
you
on
content
Paxton.
were you content going through this 13-year period of riding, training, and doing well?
Content, I think, like content in that this is the process. Yes.
Hmm.
Because again, like we always say, like Adrian and I say, like we're both incredibly stubborn people. And so if I set my mind to it, like it's gonna happen, especially if I feel like I knew I had an owner that would be very supportive, and she's always the first to say, like, no, you can do it. Like it's gonna happen. And she was not gonna ever buy a made horse. That was her thing. And she wants it to be like a owner and a rider and a horse all built together. And so I was very blessed to have an owner that is kind of like stands behind you. And she said, because too, I told her when she first wanted to buy a horse, I said, if you want a horse to go to the Olympics or be a team horse, you need to put it with somebody like Adrian, somebody that's been there, done that, we know can produce it. I have never officially ridden Grand Prix. I can tell you I work really hard, but that's it. And I had worked for her for like 3 years at that point in time. And she said, that's not what I want. She said, yes, ideally, it would be great to have a horse to be on a team. But what I want is to do this with you because of who you are and how you value me. I'm like, when I came to her, it was just to teach her and her kids. It was like five kids with family friends and stuff. And there was no sponsorship. There was no talk about sponsorship. She was very clear that it would never be a sponsorship. And so that was really very special. So I think that I was content in the process because I enjoy the training process so much. Not to say there was not huge doubts and huge disappointments in between, but I felt like I could still see so much growth. And also, we did an open house at one of our farms that I researched a very interesting fact about horses and dressage is that the average Olympian in all the Olympics is 27, and the average dressage Olympian is 37. So of course that's hard pill to swallow when Adrian went to her first Olympics really young and stuff like that. But I just felt like if I have the talent and the hard work to do it, I'm in the program. Like it's gonna happen. Just be patient and keep producing horses smartly and compassionately.
Perfect. And you started out working at TYL teaching. Was that what you did? I mean, were you doing stable work or was it all teaching and riding?
All teaching. So they wanted me to ride. That when I went and interviewed, I was again still very sure that I did not want the job because I did not want to leave. And Kylie interviewed somebody else that was a little bit older. I was only 23, and it was to do all the managing work, and then teach, and ride, but not show. It was never to show the girls' horses. It was just to help them train them. And we had 5 girls, all between the age of, I think the youngest was 12 when I started, and 16. So we had a group of girls, and then Kylie herself rides. And she said, it's only ever to ride and to teach. And I said, that's fine. For a year, I'll make some money. I really do enjoy teaching a lot. And so when I went there she brought me in for 4 days to ride them, before I could get up there and get moved. And I actually injured my knees and I was not able to ride for an entire like 2 years. So I moved to Colorado. She luckily still hired me because she's the kindest person in the world. She goes, "Can you still like get my kids to do juniors and young riders and ponies without being able to ride their horses?" And I said, "I will try my hardest." And I didn't ride for an entire 2 years. And we did, I had like a girl at juniors, a young rider, 2 years of young riders, a year U25, a girl into ponies. So we had a very successful couple of years. And then Kylie was like, "What would it take to get you to stay?" I said, "Honestly, I need to start doing something for myself. Like, I am here to train these kids and it's going great and I love them and I love you. But if I leave here, I don't teach any outside lessons. I don't do any clinics. I don't show. It's going to be like I dropped the face of the earth and I'm going to have nothing to fall back on." And she said, "Okay, what if I buy you a young horse?" I was like, "Okay, that'll work." And it went from one young horse to 2 young horses to, I think I want to own a team horse. So how can we get down that road? And then we ended up coming down here for a season because I said, if you do want to do a team situation, there's no way you can do that in Colorado year round. Qualifying starts way too late. You're too far from the shows. The weather's too finicky, like too early in qualifying and stuff. So then we came down here and rented stalls for a year and then ended up buying the farm the year later.
Fantastic. So coming up to leading up to this past year, just tell us a little bit about your year, how the qualifying went, and then we want to hear about you showing in Europe.
So we did, so Quartet's first, I was actually his first CDI, or for his first Grand Prix and my first Grand Prix. So that was exciting. We had our first Grand Prix together. And that was, so in 2021, I was named to the Compiègne Nations Cup team. And it was in December of 2020 that he had his very first Grand Prix and my very first Grand Prix. So, and then very quickly, Adrian was like, "You're out of the national ring, go to the CDI." And then we did the Compiègne Nations Cup and we ended up not being able to compete because of the EHV outbreak. So we went over there, everything got ready. We were there, everyone was excited. And then literally we were doing the EHV testing like the day before we were supposed to go to Compiègne, and one of the horses, not mine, but one of the horses tested positive. So now we are all quarantined in Belgium, sitting around for weeks, hanging out, getting all well acquainted. And I ended up doing Achleiten up in Austria a couple weeks, 3 weeks after that, and then came home. And it was a really incredible, very fun experience. And then this last year, we started showing, and I started with a World Cup qualifier. Kylie his owner rode Quartet all summer. And then after between festival and when he came down to Florida, and I took him back right when he got down to Florida. And then 2 weeks later, he went to the W and got a 70 and came in second, and then a 75 in the freestyle. But he's just one of those horses that he's so honest. So that was a really exciting way to start the year last year for sure. And then Paxton also did his first national Grand Prix at that same show, and we all lived to tell the tale. So that was equally as exciting, because we've had him since he was 7, and he had like a green flying change, and that was pretty much it. So that one's been a very exciting one to bring along for sure. And then we just we were like, we'll just show and see how it goes and qualify maybe to be able to do Wellington Nations Cup. That was a goal of mine for Quartet last year for sure. And had a couple really good shows and just kept getting better and more confident. And he just kept pushing the score higher and higher. And it's not because he's the most brilliant, the biggest mover. There's plenty of stuff that I tell people he'll do things for 6s. He doesn't get huge scores and everything. But what he is he's very correct, and he's extremely pleasant to watch and has a great, harmonious way of going. And one thing that Adrian's very good about our students with is you do not leave points on the table. You ride those lines to the letter. You ride your geometry right. You think about where their frame is all the time. That kind of stuff is really important. So he's a great testament to that, because I feel like just sheer talent wise, he's about a 67, 68, maybe on a great day horse. But because you can present it in a really harmonious way and you can ride super, super correct and super to the point, and he's such a confidence giving horse that he makes you feel like you can ride for that 9. And even if it's not achievable, you can ride for it. And he's the same in pretty much every environment. He's actually quite electric. He's very, very hot. But he uses it in such a good way. So had a couple really good shows, got named to Wellington Nations Cup. That was extremely exciting. Really enjoyed the time there and had a great team. It was a great first like actual team experience since Compiègne kind of was a failure to launch. And then offhandedly, I'd asked Adrian, I was like, do you think I should apply for WEG? Because on the WEG list, the World Championship list, he was pretty like, maybe it was like 9th or something. And Paxton was also kind of relatively around there. And she's like, come on, he is not going to World Championship. Like, I know, but like, it'd be cool to be on the list because that does look nice. It looks like a good thing for your resume. And maybe then I could go to Europe with them and whatever. And she's like, I don't know, talk to Debbie. Debbie's like, you never know. She goes, throw your name in there. At least it looks, I said, at least people aren't, I don't want people to look at the applications and be like, really, Katie, you think he's going to go to the World Championships? And she's like, no, they won't. So I applied, and Thomas Bauer actually asked me at one of the W's, he's like, are you going to do more W's? Because I'd done 2. And I said, no, like, he's not a World Cup horse. Like, he's not good enough for that. And he's like, come on, you have enough points. Like, you should just do one more. And I was like, he's not a World Cup horse. No. Well, turns out he's a World Championship horse. So that was a very exciting surprise. And so I applied for Aachen and Rotterdam, and got invited to both of them, Paxton and Rotterdam, and Quartet and Aachen. We actually took Quartet with us to Rotterdam to just do a national class there, just as kind of a warm up for Aachen. They were back-to-back weekends. And again, I just thought we were going to go in, have a nice little national class. They ended up being in the big stadium, which was great to have him out in an atmosphere again. And again, he just went in there and was like, he's quite small. They're both small. Quartet is about 16-1. And he just said, I'm small, but I am mighty, and won with a 72 out of a whole field of Dutch riders. So it was very, very exciting. It was a good, again, confidence building way to start the European tour.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. Mary, are you ready?
Oh,
I am.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to do the drawing for the Trafalgar Square horse books, whatever. Mary has her elegant hat,
Yes.
and everyone's name is in the hat. And you have to be attending.
All right. Is there an Abigail Trinkle on the call? Let's see if I can.
Unmute yourself, Abigail, and yell at us. I think you have to draw again.
All right.
Go for it, Mary.
Yep. Oh dear. Selena Kozlowski. Let me see if there's a Selena.
Kozlowski.
Nope.
These are all the people that signed up, but they're going to be listening to
out.
the recording. Keep your fingers crossed, everybody.
Okay. Michaela Wilbert. I think I saw Michaela.
I am here.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank
Mary will be in touch with you with the gift certificate. And again, a huge Trafalgar Square has just been such an incredible help and sponsor to D4K with their books. So we're going to come back to the showing a little bit. I'd like to ask you, well, specifically, and anyone that has questions, I hope you put them in the chat. I forgot to mention that, but we did have one question. You, sorry, you mentioned a little earlier about training compassionately. What does that mean to you?
I think it's really important to remember that yes, these horses are bred to do this, and every year they're getting more and more incredible, but our number one job is to be a good teacher. And so that does not always mean winning the argument that day. That does not always mean feeling like you've made as much progress as possible. What to me that means is that your job is to take this horse that does not speak any English and explain to them why in God's name you want them to do all these weird things. And if they tell you, listen, lady, like, I'm not getting it, then you need to break it down smaller and smaller and smaller until the horse says, okay, this is accomplishable. Because the minute they start feeling like they can't find the right answer, they can't make you happy, you're done. And some horses will take that pressure, but the majority of horses, especially it seems to be like the ones that I like to attract, because I like the ones that need a little more mental work with them, they will try harder in the end. But it has to come from being a place like, I can't tell you how much walk work I have done with Quartet, because he would just get his body in the wrong shape. And I told Adrian, I was like, I feel like the minute he's in the wrong shape, if you say try harder, fix it, all he does is try harder at the wrong thing. But he will try his hardest, but it feels like he's doing the wrong thing. And it would be so easy to get mad at them or frustrated in that moment, instead of realizing they are trying. If they're not getting it, that's your job to change how you're asking them, and not change what you're going for in the end, but make it a more solvable problem, something that they can say, oh, I understand now what this means. And then they'll start feeling more and more confident. I think to me, that's the biggest thing, and to like know your horses and know that if they say they're not feeling well, or they say that, even if you came into your brain and your lesson today or your training ride and you say, you know what, today I'm going to work on, from a Grand Prix horse, like some passage and some pirouettes, and they feel like they need a day of doing transitions, guess what? Your training plan has changed now. And especially when you're developing them. And, you know, Paxton has been a huge teacher of that to me, because as much as I love him, he is not the brightest tool in the shed. Like he's a little slow, and that's okay. But he also is extremely spooky and extremely not confident. And then you add on a whole layer of he's a very emotional horse. And so if he's sad, he's really sad. If he is scared, he's really scared. Like everything is packed to the max. And so I had to really work. And I think before the program he came to from before, there was a lot of pressure. And there was times when I was like, I don't even know what you're doing. Like, what are you even doing down there? Like, are you okay? Are you a horse? And so I spent all of COVID summer, Adrian keeps telling me I was not allowed to sell him, even though I wanted to for a lot of times. And she's like, he's going to be the best horse you've ever had. So you have to find a way to make it work. And he's incredibly sweet. And I clicker trained him a whole summer, because I realized, and it was so enlightening. I had 4 horses. I was extremely bored. And so I started clicker training him. And for weeks, you click and feed him a treat, and click and feed him a treat. And like other horses, within 5 repetitions, they're like click and they look for their treat. Weeks of him saying, I don't, you click, and then he'll just have a blank stare, and you put a treat in his face and he goes, oh, thanks, you fed me a treat. And for me, that was just a whole nother layer. I've always loved the mental aspect of trying to train them, but that was a whole nother layer of saying, you know what? He doesn't even know when I'm telling him he's good. Like he doesn't know that. He can't figure that out. So I need to find a way, instead of just saying good boy over and over and over, I need to think outside the box. How can I make this work? And I clicker trained my dog for many years in dog training. And I was like, I wonder if I could do that with a horse. And by the end of that summer, he could walk over tarps. He could do changes over tarps. I could drag tarps on him. He learned a ton of tricks, and all because of clicker training. And even now, like if I bring out his clicker and put his rope halter on, he gets this like dopey, soft-eyed look, and he's like, oh, we're gonna go spend time together. This is great. And I think that for me is really the compassionate part, is to understand that they don't have to do this for you ever. Like this is something that we have to earn the right and earn the respect and the privilege of being able to take them on this incredible journey and teach them all these amazing things that they can do with their body. And so that's something that both Adrian and I are extremely passionate about.
Fantastic. We do have a question from one of the people watching. When you were in school, did you ever have to deal with people telling you that there was no future in horses? And how, if so, how did you mentally deal with that?
Yes. I've always kind of been a person that, like, I'm pretty independent. So again, I have a few very quality people in my life, but I don't have any need to have quantities of people. So again, that is the surround yourself with people that are going to make you, encourage you to be a better person and encourage you to be realistic, but then also chase your dreams. And so I think, it's not just about dream chasing. It's about knowing that the path to chase your dreams is so much work underneath. It's never just this, like, oh, I want to go and I want to ride and I want to show. And so I think that you have to remember that that person has their own thing that they want to chase, that somebody else might be telling them, no, that you could never do that with your life. And that it shouldn't matter. Like, everyone has their own path in life that they feel like they are destined to do. And if that person is not being helpful as like a friend, then it might not be a good influence you as a friend. And if it's your parents saying it's not possible, then obviously heed their advice and say, okay, like, I understand this seems like wildly impossible, but mom, here's how I think we could make this work. Here's how, like, my parents were very clear. We cannot buy you a young rider horse. We cannot buy you a U25 horse. We will pay for your shows. So if you want to figure out how to do the rest, you do it. And then they were also very clear once I graduated high school. They said, we will not pay for your shows if you do not go to college. And if you do not pay for your car and your computer and your insurance and all this kind of stuff. So I said, all right, here's how I'm going to make it work. I'm going to work full-time training, and then I'm going to go to school at night. And that is the way that it worked for me. But I think you have to just really find those good quality people.
You, of course, yourself did young riders, and you've trained quite a few young riders that have gone to the North Americans. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have advice for these? We have a lot of young people watching, some who might have the opportunity to do it and some who just dream of doing it. So I have a sort of a two-part question. Do you have some advice for those that are headed towards young riders in the future? But also, what about those who it's just not going to happen? I mean, if you hadn't been fortunate enough to have that one person respond to you and say, here, at least my horse, would that have been the end of the world for you? Because it's not, I mean, let's face it, only 4 riders from every region get to go, not to mention those that don't get to qualify.
Yeah, so I think young riders definitely yields an amazing experience because for me, horses are not, they're not a common thing in kids' lives. It's not like you're going to meet a bunch of people at school that are like, oh, wow, cool. You ride horses and I ride horses and we can have this camaraderie and this understanding. And so you don't really encounter those kind of people normally, like at least I didn't in regular school and life. So going to Young Riders is a really neat experience to see all these people that value and love the same thing you are valuing and loving. And that was really exciting and inspiring, and also gave a really good insight onto what having like a team atmosphere would be like. And then also know that, again, this is like a typical training horses comment. There is never one path to success, ever. There is never one way that is 100% right to train every single horse. Like, that's part of the training compassionately, is every single horse that we get, okay, we think, okay, this is what we think would work, and then we alter it for what is working for that horse at that moment. So just because you view success as young riders, or if you want to go and do the later things in your life as the only path to get to where you want to be in later in life with horses, it doesn't have to be. I didn't show Grand Prix until the year before I went to World Championships. I didn't have my gold medal, my USDF gold medal, until the year, literally, I got it in the mail 8 months before I went to World Championships. And so and I have trained a lot of Grand Prix horses. I've ridden Grand Prix at home. I'm sure that I've ridden it in my head for a 75, but I had not done it. And yet then the Kylie, her oldest daughter, when I started, they had gotten a Grand Prix schoolmaster for her. And she was at that point the youngest person in the US to ever have gotten her gold medal. And she was 16 or 17. And she was 16. And I was there as her coach, and I've ridden Grand Prix. I don't have my gold medal. But again, if you ever, one thing I always try to tell the young people I coach is that somebody is always watching, somebody is always noticing, and they're not noticing the way you ride. Probably, I mean, maybe they are, but the most important thing they notice is how you treat your horse and how you treat other people. And all the other people, not just your coach, not your trainer, not your groom, but how you treat the people in the show office, how you treat the ring steward. Like, those are the kind of people that people want to get behind and support, is the people who treat other people with respect and kindness and grant them grace because maybe they're having a bad day. And so I think that is the most important thing for me when I coach people that want to have success in the sport, is that it's never the wrong decision to just be kind, ever, to a horse or to a human. And that is what people notice, is that kindness and that determination and humility.
Wow, thank you. Let's go back to some nitty gritty here. We're running out of time. This has been fantastic. What would you say you've shown in the West, and you've shown in Wellington, and you've shown at Rotterdam and others, Aachen and so forth in Europe? What's the biggest difference between the European shows and the American shows?
For me, I think so when we work a lot, I work with Laura King for like a sports psychologist, because I think that's a huge, again, that was career changing for me when I started with her 4 years ago. Like, she's been amazing in my sport life. And so we always work that when you get inside that white box, like, it is the same. The fences are the same. The letters are the same. You ride like you always ride, like you do your job every day. But for me, the big difference between the European shows and here is that horses are so much more part of the culture in Europe.
Mhm.
And so you'll have, even if it's in a small, so obviously you have Aachen, it's a tiny town, but it's a giant show. But then you'll have, even when I was over there and I do national shows, like when I lived there, it's this like little tiny town, it's this little tiny national show. And when you have a national show here like that, it's the only people watching are the people that are watching you, and then they leave. Like, that's their whole job, is to come watch you. And you have these tiny little shows in tiny towns, and the entire town comes and watch. And it's like, kids come and they have like food stands, and they don't even ride, and their family just enjoys coming and watching horses. And it's so much more part of a culture. And to me, that's really, really special. And you can feel like that heartbeat for horses a little bit more. And that for me is probably one of the biggest differences. And even just in Aachen, like, seeing the education of the crowd that is watching, like, Adrian goes, okay, so here's the deal. When you show at Rotterdam, like, it's a little wild, it's a little like a party, and it was very high energy. And then she goes, when you show at Aachen, it's going to feel very peaceful and like serene in the ring. But if you have a mistake, like a slightly late flying change behind, not like a big mistake, but like again, maybe your horse changed together behind, the whole crowd's going to go, she goes, don't be alarmed. Just keep riding like you've been riding. And she's right. Like, it's incredible. The crowd is like a mouse, like so quiet and so into like what's happening and educated, that you can feel like that many people love the same sport you love. And that is very special to me, and love horses, because it's all so many different sports at Aachen. Like, everybody goes, and there's just a ton of people that all love horses.
Mhm. If I can tell just a very quick story, I went to Aachen, much like you, as someone that was totally new at Grand Prix. Nobody, knew I existed. But as long as you were walking around the showgrounds and riding clothes, all these kids were coming up and asking for my autograph. They didn't know who I was, nobody, but
Yeah.
because I was riding at Aachen, I must be somebody. It's
Yep.
and it's an amazing experience. I have one other question, and maybe this didn't quite happen, but you mentioned that you trained a lot of horses to Grand Prix, and you trained horses and then they would, be sold, or the owner would start riding them or whatever. Do you find it difficult to deal with them and you develop a real partnership with a horse and then off it goes? Is that hard for you to deal with, or not? Did we freeze again?
I think she froze again. Oh no. Oh,
Oh,
Sorry, I'm back.
There you are.
Sorry. Yeah, it's
No, you're frozen again.
okay.
there
So
you are.
you said I've trained. Okay. Perfect.
Did you hear the question?
You just said that I had trained some horses to Grand Prix.
Yes, you've trained horses to Grand Prix, and you had said you'd trained quite a few, but then they would be sold, or the owner would take them, or whatever. Did you find that difficult to deal with after developing a partnership with a horse, or is that easy for you to do?
I think that yes and no. I think obviously, like, we sold one that we bought as 4, and I finished him to Grand Prix, and we sold to the 12-year-old. 11-year-old. But I think for me, if I'm building it for somebody else, like I have built Grand Prix horses for Kylie, no, that's not difficult, because again, like if I can give her 1 ounce of the feeling of joy that it is to ride like one of these incredible feeling horses, that brings me like an immense amount of joy in my life. Like I love that, to let people get to feel that incredible special feeling. And as far as selling them, I feel like Kylie is very good about, she wants to develop these horses. And if some horses make teams, great. If they don't, they either have to work out to be a horse for her in the future, or if like right now we're at the point of, if it's not going to be the potential to be like a 76 to 80% horse for a team horse, which is what you're looking at these days to be a team horse, then we're going to keep it until it's the right age and the right amount of training to sell, to hopefully make back what we put into it and invest that into another horse. So I think one of the things that's really important about horses is to understand that not every horse is going to be a 75% Grand Prix horse or a 73% Grand Prix horse. And if you hold on to the ones that aren't that, and you try to always make them that, 2 things: A, they're going to always feel like they're a failure and they're never good enough, and B, they're going to break. And like last summer when we came down here, before I showed in Ocala at the W, I told Adrian I started having lessons on Quartet again, and Kylie had been riding him all summer, and I rode him like 3 or 4 times before I left home. And I came down here and I rode him a little bit, and she's like, "Hey, what do you want to work on?" And I was like, honestly, I said, I think I've been too hard on him. I'm being too picky. I'm feeling like I want to get that 72 so bad, that his biggest selling point is his harmony and his try. And I'm making him feel like a failure. Like I can tell he's shutting down. He's telling me like, I can't make you happy anymore. So I said, honestly, the week before the show, 10 days before the show, I literally want to do some movements on him, get him off of my seat, tell him he's the best horse in the entire universe, and that's it. And she's like, all right, let's do it. And then it led into the most incredible season that I've ever had, because I said, I'm going to stop trying to make you that 72% horse that I think maybe you could be one day, but that is like your max, and start being so grateful for what you are now and what you've done for me. And then he ended up getting those scores without me even pushing for them that much, because he felt like he wanted to give more. So, I think that it's hard to part with them, but I think if you know that they're going to a place where they could be someone's one and only, or the best horse of their lives, that's okay then, because then I think the horse will be very happy.
Such wonderful, wonderful advice. Well, I have one more question, and this comes from one of our viewers who I think you'll make very excited. She says she has a 4-year-old mare who's a granddaughter of Quarterback. Do you think she's related to Quartet?
I do, yes. He is He is quarterback. So quarterback dream of glory. And he is one of the few small quarterbacks you see. Normally they are not that small, and he is very petite. But yes, he's a fantastic horse, and I'm sure he does have a bright future. That's very exciting.
Great. This has been absolutely fabulous, Katie. Thank you so very, very much. A lot of fun to hear, things that are fun to hear about, and some fabulous advice. So we truly,
Very
truly
welcome.
thank you. I don't know if you can see the chats, but right from the beginning, there were people thanking you and saying how good it was, and now they're coming in a mile a minute.
Oh, thank you guys.
so-
I'm not very proficient at Zoom, so I have not been following the chats. But
Oh, well,
um,
we promise it's all there.
well, thank you so much.
Let me wait, just don't go away if you won't see it. Thank you so much information, excellent program. You're great.
Oh, thanks,
This
guys.
was awesome. Thanks so much. Thank you. This was such a positive and refreshing talk. Thank you.
Aw.
Okay.
I think, I'm very passionate about keeping this sport going in the right direction, and keeping people understanding that it's not always the scores that matter, and that I think that if you do right by your horses and the people in your life, it will come back to you. And it might take a long time. Look at me, it's taken a long time. But I mean, last year was really incredible.
Yeah.
So
Great. Thank you. And best of luck this year, Katie.
thank you.
Okay. Good night, everybody.